Woden Teachout about her book, Capture the Flag, A Political History of American Patriotism. Woden, the book examines patriotic symbols, and specifically the American flag, and how it's always meant different things to different people. So what has the flag represented throughout its history?
The flag is an extraordinary symbol because it has represented whatever the major issue is in American culture at that time. So if you go back to the Revolutionary War, you see it as a symbol of radical democracy. And in the 1840s, when there were loads and loads of Irish immigrants coming in, it became a symbol of anti-immigration. The Civil War, it was a symbol of anti-slavery and pro-slavery at different moments. And so you can really follow it throughout our history and see all of these different incarnations. Most recently, it's been a pro-war symbol, but then again, that's changing because of the political atmosphere.
Now, the book examines 8 historical markers. How did you choose the specific points in history for which, how the flag was captured at that point in history?
Yeah, it was a wonderful process. What I did was I began and I looked at all the different flag stories I could find. There were so many. And I decided that there were certain historical eras that I wanted to consider because the flag had a concerted meaning during those periods. And so then I went through and I looked at all the stories, and there were probably for each era 20 different stories. And I wanted to find stories that really exemplified both what the flag meant at that moment and also the transformation, how it moves from one meaning to another. And I wanted a good story. So those are my criteria, and I ended up with some really wonderful ones that I'd never heard of.
Do you mind sharing some of the specifics?
One of the stories that people find particularly compelling is about the civil rights movement, when Medgar Evers, who was a civil rights organizer, decided to put the flag into the hands of African American school children. There were 600 children. They were in Jackson, Mississippi, and they were protesting discrimination by the town businesses. And so he bought flags for each one of those 600 children, and they gathered in the church, and they opened the doors to the church, and the children walked out down the main street, and they turned the corner, and they saw there all of Mississippi law enforcement that was standing, stretched from one side of the street to the other side of the street, ready to stop them. And so the children walked right into that line of police, and the police started taking the flags. And you can just imagine, these are little African-American children and big white police officers, and the cops are taking the flags, and some of them are falling to the ground. And the children were bussed off, and the people who were left saw the street emerge, and there were these American flags in the dust and in the dirt, and it was a really powerful symbol for them, for how American rights had been trampled throughout the segregated South. And so the flag became a real symbol of the civil rights movement after that point.
And how has the flag been used in different wars, whether it's the Revolutionary or Civil War, World War II, up through Vietnam?
Yeah, I would say that the flag really has 2 different meanings in war, and these are sometimes separable and sometimes not. One is this very personal meaning for the people who are soldiers and for the families. And for them, the flag often really symbolizes their sacrifice and their service, what they're giving. It's about their particular patriotism as a gift to their country. And then it has these political meanings, and those tend to be support for whatever the current administration is. And so those are really different meanings, and they often get collapsed. And so it's fascinating to watch those shift throughout time.
And has it always been a prominent American symbol?
It has not, actually. In the Revolutionary era, if you asked anyone what the predominant American symbol was, they would never have said the flag. They might have said the goddess of liberty, they might have said the eagle, but they would not have said the American flag.
And how did that change over time?
It was in the 1840s, with this large and massive immigration, there were a number of people called nativists who really opposed the immigration, particularly anti-Catholic, and they said, how can these people, they're coming to our country, but they don't speak our language, and they're not our religion, they're not American. They should wait 21 years. We have to wait 21 years to vote. They should wait 21 years to vote. And so these nativists adopted the American flag as their symbol, and it had not really been part of the broader American culture up to that point. But at that moment in the 1840s, they adopted it. There were many other Americans who really disagreed with their assessment, and so for a while, carrying the flag or appearing at a 4th of July event meant that you were anti-immigrant, but that shifted during the Civil War.
And you mentioned it wasn't prominently displayed?
It was in the 1840s, no. They were used if you were to walk out on the street in the 1840s, you would not see flags on public buildings, you wouldn't see them on houses, you wouldn't see them on flagpoles. But it was at that point that people began to use them in private meetings and to take them on parades, for example. And then in the Civil War, with the North's entrance into the war after Fort Sumter, there was a big outpouring of flag. They called it flag reading in newspapers.
How has Americans' use of the flag as a political symbol, how does it compare with other countries?
Americans use it more. It's very interesting. That was one of the questions that I wanted to investigate when I started the book. I thought, you know, we sort of take it for granted that we're a more patriotic country and that we use the flag more. You know, is this true? And the answer is we do. We use the flag in more contexts. A lot of countries, like Germany, for example, will use it at sporting events. But Americans tend to fly it more from private homes and use it politically more than in other countries.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of our history as an immigrant nation. You can really see this moment in the 1890s when flags really entered popular culture, even in peacetime. And that was because of, again, this large, massive immigration during that period. And so the flag became a symbol, not so much of anti-immigration, but of Americanization. And so many people began to use it on a daily basis in the way they had before.
And how did you become interested in a flag as a symbol? And how did you decide to write the book?
I did my doctoral work on the development of patriotic culture in the 1990s. And so when I would talk to people about that, the piece that really interested them was the flag. And everybody had their own relationship to the flag. It was really wonderful. Everyone has a flag story. And I then went to an anti-war rally carrying the American flag. And as I took it through town, we can do this part again. Should I start up again? And
Hold on 1 second, let me go ahead. Yeah, that was unexpected. Okay.
You wanted to buy a children's book.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay. All right, well, I'll start that again. So my personal interest began when I took the flag to an anti-war rally, and I was surrounded by people. My sister and I had it, and we were holding the flag, and people started looking at us kind of funny, and space sort of opened up between us and everybody else, and we realized they didn't know whether we were part of the protest or a counter-demonstration, because the flag at that point in 2003 had such strong pro-war connotations. And so I began to get really interested, because for me it was a symbol of democracy. You know, people in the streets talking to their government, and for other people it was a very strongly pro-war symbol. So why did we both have these very different interpretations, and how could that be explained in story?
Well, we've been talking with Woden Teachout, author of Capture the Flag, A Political History of American Patriotism. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, sit tight just for a minute.
You good?
I'm fine. I just need to, I'm going to, let's